I never imagined that something as ordinary as a jacket could ignite a firestorm inside me. When I chose it, I had thought of warmth, style, a symbol of permanence. A wedding gift from me to her, custom-stitched, imported fabric, my initials hidden within the lining, a subtle reminder that our lives were supposed to intertwine forever. She smiled when she unwrapped it, pressed her lips against mine, whispered that no man had ever given her anything so thoughtful. At that moment, I believed her words carried the weight of eternity. But belief is fragile, and mine began to shatter with glances, laughter, and the presence of another man named Adrian. Adrian entered our lives through her office. She called him a colleague at first, then a friend, then simply Adrian. His name slipped from her tongue so casually that it carried no introduction anymore, as if I was expected to know him, as though he had been with us all along. I noticed how her eyes lit up when she spoke about his jokes, how she leaned forward slightly when she answered his calls at midnight, whispering as if not to disturb me. She thought I was asleep. I wasn't. I questioned her once, careful with my words, afraid of sounding jealous. "Why does Adrian call so late?" I asked. She gave a laugh that felt rehearsed, not genuine, like an actress reciting a familiar line. "You're reading too much into it. He's just funny, that's all. You're insecure." That word stung. Insecure. As if my discomfort wasn't born of observation but weakness. I swallowed it down, not wanting to appear controlling, though something inside me twisted. I had trusted her with everything, my heart, my savings, my belief that fidelity was sacred. Yet when she dismissed my concerns, a crack opened. Time passed, and that crack widened. I saw the way she dressed for lunches with him, new earrings, lip gloss shimmering under the kitchen light. She had never done that for casual errands with me. I wanted to say something, but each time I tried, her eyes hardened, as though daring me to accuse her of something unspoken. And always, the word hung between us like poison, insecure. The turning point came one rainy Saturday. She invited Adrian over, saying they were working on a project for her office. I tried to occupy myself in the study, pretending not to hear their muffled laughter. After a while, I stepped out for water. And that was when I saw it. Adrian walked into the living room wearing my jacket. My wedding gift, the one I had chosen with such care. It fit him too well, hugging his shoulders as though tailored for him, not me. His fingers casually brushed the fabric, and my wife sat across from him, smiling in a way that made my stomach churn. "Doesn't it look great on him?" she asked, as if I should be proud. My throat tightened. Words failed me. I stared, caught between fury and disbelief. That jacket wasn't clothing. It was memory, promise, part of our story. To see it draped over another man felt like betrayal stitched in every seam. I muttered something about needing fresh air, and stepped outside, rain soaking my shirt as I gasped for breath. The city lights blurred through water and tears I wouldn't admit to shedding. At that moment, I realized jealousy wasn't my enemy. Truth was. Inside, they laughed again, a sound that didn't belong in my home anymore. Rain had always soothed me, but that night its rhythm only sharpened my thoughts. I stood under the dripping eaves, watching cars hiss past, asking myself why I hadn't ripped the jacket off Adrian's shoulders. Maybe because outrage would have confirmed her accusation that I was insecure, territorial, unreasonable. Instead, I swallowed my pride and walked back inside pretending indifference, though my insides burned. Adrian rose when he saw me, still wearing the jacket. He greeted me with an easy smile, the kind men use when they believe they belong. My wife offered him wine, pouring generously, as though he were our honored guest. I noticed how she leaned close to him while reaching for the bottle opener, her hand brushing his arm too casually to be accidental. I sat across from them, glass of water in hand, watching their performance. They laughed at stories I wasn't part of, shared office gossip I didn't care about, exchanged looks that lasted too long. My silence grew heavier by the minute. When I finally excused myself and retreated upstairs, neither of them protested. The house that once echoed with our shared warmth now hummed with alien voices, voices that didn't include me. Lying in the dark, I remembered her vow on our wedding day, her promise to love me faithfully. That vow now felt like ink washed away by rain. Yet doubt fought with memory. Maybe I was exaggerating, maybe Adrian truly was just a friend. Still, the image of him in my jacket refused to fade. That single sight contained 1,000 unspoken betrayals. The next morning, sunlight cut through the curtains. She entered the kitchen humming, cheerful, almost radiant. I couldn't reconcile her glow with the storm churning inside me. I asked carefully, why was he wearing the jacket? She glanced at me as though I had asked why the sky was blue. He was cold. I lent it to him. Why are you making everything so dramatic? Her dismissal landed like a slap. That was my wedding gift to you, I said, my voice trembling despite my effort to stay calm. And it's just a jacket, she replied, rolling her eyes. You're overreacting again. Insecure, as always. There it was again, that word sharp as broken glass. I wanted to scream that insecurity wasn't the same as betrayal, that trust deserved respect, not ridicule. But she turned away, clattering plates into the sink, ending the conversation before it could truly begin. That day at work, I could barely focus. My mind replayed every detail. His shoulders filling the fabric, her bright smile, her careless dismissal of my pain. I realized the problem wasn't Adrian. It was her refusal to acknowledge how deeply she had hurt me. Love without respect is hollow, and I began to wonder how much respect she still had left for me. Weeks passed. Adrian's presence in our lives didn't shrink, it grew. His name appeared in her calendar more often than mine. Late-night messages lit her screen while we sat in silence on the couch. When I reached for her hand, she withdrew absent-mindedly, eyes fixed on her phone. Our intimacy dwindled, replaced by an invisible wall neither of us named. One evening, I found a strand of men's cologne on her scarf. She claimed it was from hugging Adrian goodbye. My chest tightened. I wanted to believe her, but belief had become a luxury I couldn't afford. Trust once broken doesn't return easily. It limps, scarred, uncertain of its footing. And still, she called me insecure. That night, lying awake beside her sleeping figure, I realized I stood on a cliff's edge. One step further, and our marriage would fall into an abyss from which neither of us could climb back. Sleep became foreign to me. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, counting every breath she took beside me, wondering if each exhale carried someone else's name. My mind turned into a restless machine, replaying fragments of conversations, analyzing pauses, studying the tilt of her smile when she mentioned Adrian. One night, while she showered, her phone buzzed on the dresser. Normally, I respected her privacy, but the glow of his name on the screen pulled me in like a flame draws a moth. My hand trembled as I lifted it, reading the preview. Tonight was incredible. Can't stop thinking about it. My pulse thundered. Incredible? Thinking about what? I scrolled further, my breath catching on every word. Their thread contained jokes, emojis, photographs of dinners I hadn't been invited to. Some messages hinted at intimacy without spelling it outright, half-covered compliments, late-night confessions, her laughter captured in digital form. She had saved his words like treasure, while my texts, I realized, had gone unanswered for hours, sometimes days. The shower stopped. Panic surged. I set the phone back, face down, returning to bed. When she entered, hair damp, skin glowing, I closed my eyes, feigning sleep. But inside, fury mixed with grief until I thought my chest might split open. The following morning, I couldn't keep quiet. Over breakfast, I asked, "Were you with Adrian last night?" She raised her eyebrows, buttering toast with deliberate calm. "Yes. We worked late." "Why?" "Because he texted you," I replied, my voice low. Her knife froze mid-slice. "You checked my phone?" The air between us crackled. I admitted nothing, though guilt flushed my cheek. She shook her head, muttering, "I can't believe this. You're suffocating me with your paranoia." You've always been insecure. The word stabbed again, deeper than ever. Insecure, her shield against my questions, her weapon to silence my pain. But now I had seen enough to know my instincts weren't madness. They were warnings. Later that week, I decided to confront the truth directly. I left work early, heart pounding as I drove toward the cafe where she had said she'd be meeting a client. From across the street, I spotted her through the glass window. She wasn't alone with a client. She was with him. Adrian sat too close, leaning toward her, his hand brushing hers on the table. She laughed softly, tilting her head in that familiar way she once reserved only for me. I stood frozen, hidden behind passing pedestrians, my world unraveling with each second. A part of me wanted to burst in, demand answers, flip the table if necessary. Another part urged silence, observation. So I lingered, invisible, until I saw what I feared most. Her fingers slipping briefly into his, a fleeting gesture that confirmed what words had never confessed. When she came home later, she smelled faintly of his cologne again. I didn't mention the cafe. Instead, I asked about her client. She lied smoothly, eyes steady, voice unwavering. I nodded, pretending to believe, but inside something hardened. Love turned into stone, fragile yet immovable. That night, I stared at the jacket still hanging in our closet. Its fabric carried his shape now, not mine. It mocked me, whispering that I had been replaced. I realized the garment wasn't just a symbol anymore, it was evidence, silent testimony of how far she had strayed. And yet, when I tried to picture walking away, my legs refused to move. I still loved her. That was the cruelest truth of all. Confrontation sat on my tongue like bitter fruit, ready to be bitten but never swallowed. Every time I resolved to speak, her eyes disarmed me. They carried a practiced innocence, a mask perfected through years of knowing me, of learning exactly how to twist my doubts into shame. I told myself I needed proof beyond glances and text messages. Proof undeniable, something she couldn't dismiss with that single word, insecure. So I watched more closely. I became a shadow in my own home, studying her routines, noticing the subtle changes. The perfume she sprayed more often, the lingerie hidden beneath casual clothes, the glow on her skin after late meetings. Our conversations dwindled to necessities. Groceries, bills, schedules, while silence devoured everything else. One evening, as she left for another supposed dinner with coworkers, I followed. The city's neon lights blurred as I trailed her taxi on foot, heart pounding with every step. She entered a quiet restaurant tucked into an alley I'd never noticed before. Through the window, I saw him already waiting, that jacket, my jacket, slung over the back of his chair like a trophy. She greeted him with a kiss on the cheek, her smile radiant in ways I hadn't seen in months. I stood hidden behind a lamppost, watching her lean forward, laughter spilling freely, her hand brushing his as though drawn by magnetism. It wasn't the dinner of colleagues. It was a scene painted in intimacy, careless of the world outside. I turned away, unable to endure more. My legs carried me through streets buzzing with strangers, faces blurred, voices drowned out by the roar in my head. Betrayal doesn't always scream. It whispers, slowly eroding trust until nothing remains but rubble. When she returned later that night, I asked where she'd been. She lied without hesitation, mentioning a group dinner, traffic, exhaustion. I studied her face, searching for cracks in her composure. None appeared. She kissed my forehead lightly, as if she had given me a gift rather than a wound. Days stretched into weeks. I sank deeper into silence, carrying secrets heavier than stone. The jacket became an obsession. Every time I saw it hanging in the closet, I pictured Adrian's shoulders filling it, his warmth imprinted into the fabric. One night, while she slept, I pulled it out, pressing it against my chest. The faint scent of cologne lingered, foreign and invasive. I nearly tore it apart with my bare hands but stopped, realizing destruction would erase evidence. Instead, I decided to confront him, not her. If she refused to acknowledge my pain, perhaps he would. One afternoon, I waited outside her office, knowing he often lingered after hours. When he finally emerged, jacket slung over his arm, our eyes met. "Adrian," I said, voice sharper than I intended. He smiled politely, though recognition flickered in his gaze. "Hey, you're her husband," I finished for him. The word hung heavy. He shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the street. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble." "You already caused it," I replied, stepping closer. "Why are you wearing my jacket?" His lips parted, then closed. He looked away, muttering, "She said it didn't matter." Those words cut deeper than any admission. She said it didn't matter. Our marriage, our vows, my gift, all dismissed in casual conversation. I clenched my fists, but violence would only reduce me to ashes. Instead, I turned away, leaving him with the weight of my silence. That night, I didn't mention the encounter. She came home late again, humming softly, unaware that her carefully woven fabric of lies had begun to unravel. For the first time, I felt not only anger but clarity. I wasn't insecure. I was betrayed. The decision to confront her arrived without fanfare. It wasn't anger alone that pushed me forward, but exhaustion. Tiredness carved into my bones, tired of swallowing silence, tired of being labeled insecure when truth glared so boldly in front of me. My love for her had become a cage, and each bar of that cage was forged by my hesitation. I chose a Sunday morning. The house was quiet, sunlight spilling through the curtains, the kind of morning once filled with pancakes and laughter. She sat at the table scrolling through her phone, coffee steaming beside her. The sight might have been ordinary to anyone else, but to me it was a battlefield waiting for the first shot. I placed the jacket on the table between us. The fabric landed with a heavy thud, startling her. She looked up, eyebrows arched. "Why was he wearing this?" I asked. My voice was calm, but beneath it burned a storm. Her fingers brushed the collar absent-mindedly, as though touching a memory. "I told you. He was cold. You're making too much of it." "No," I said firmly, surprising even myself. "Not anymore. I saw you with him. At the cafe. At the restaurant. I know the late nights aren't work. I know the messages. I know everything." Her face froze, then shifted into anger quicker than I could breathe. "You spied on me? You invaded my privacy." "I defended my marriage," I replied. "Or at least, what's left of it." Silence crackled between us, sharp as broken glass. She looked away, chewing her lip, searching for the right lie. But this time, I didn't flinch. Finally, she exhaled. "Fine. Yes. I've been seeing him. But it's not what you think." "Not what I think?" I laughed bitterly. "Then tell me, what is it? Because from where I stand, it looks like you gave him more than friendship. You gave him pieces of what was supposed to be ours." Her eyes watered, though whether from guilt or manipulation, I couldn't tell. "You stopped making me feel alive," she whispered. He listened. He made me laugh. You became distant." The words struck, not as knives but as hammers, breaking whatever fragile illusions I still clung to. I wanted to argue, to remind her of the nights I waited awake, the meals I cooked, the ways I tried to pull us back together. But none of it mattered. She had chosen him, not because I was absent, but because she wanted something beyond us. "Then why didn't you leave?" I asked softly. She stared at me, silent. And in that silence, I found my answer. She hadn't stayed for love. She had stayed for comfort, for security, for the illusion of a husband while her heart wandered elsewhere. I pushed the jacket toward her. "Keep it. Clearly it belongs to him more than me." Her face crumpled, but I didn't stay to watch. I walked out the door, air biting my lungs, sunlight too bright for my weary eyes. My footsteps carried me nowhere in particular, only away, further from the lies that had suffocated me. For the first time, I felt something strange. Not anger, not grief, but liberation. The truth, though jagged, was finally mine. And yet, as I stood alone beneath the sky, I couldn't silence the echo of her voice, The memory of her touch, the weight of years we had built together. Betrayal doesn't just destroy love, it haunts it, turning every memory into a ghost. I realized then that healing wouldn't come quickly. Trust once shattered doesn't rebuild in days. It lingers like a wound, slow to close, quick to reopen. But one truth remained unshakable: I wasn't insecure. I was a man who believed too deeply, loved too fiercely, and lost everything in the process. I left the house that morning without a plan, carrying nothing but the echo of her confession. Streets stretched endlessly, each one reminding me of a life I no longer recognized. Couples held hands at bus stops, children laughed near fountains, strangers exchanged smiles that carried no burden. I felt like a ghost moving among them, invisible, hollow, stripped of the identity I had built around being a husband. Days blurred into one another. I rented a small apartment overlooking the river, its walls bare, its air smelling faintly of dust and paint. At night, I would sit by the window, watching reflections ripple in the water, wondering if love was ever as permanent as we pretend it to be. Her face haunted me in fragments, her laughter from our early days, the softness in her eyes when she once called me home, the way she held my hand under starlight. Those memories twisted cruelly now, poisoned by the reality of what followed. She tried to call in the weeks that followed. At first, I ignored her, letting the phone buzz against the table until silence returned. Then, curiosity betrayed me. I answered once. Her voice cracked through the receiver, soft, pleading. She said she made a mistake, that Adrian wasn't worth what she had lost. She asked if we could rebuild, start fresh, patch the broken seams. I listened, heart heavy. But each word she spoke collided with the image of him in that jacket, laughing beside her while I stood outside, unseen. Trust doesn't regenerate like skin. Once torn, it becomes scar tissue, forever sensitive, forever weak. I can't, I said finally. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. You didn't just break us, you broke me. And I won't spend the rest of my life patching holes you chose to tear. She cried, but I didn't. My tears had already been spent in silence long before. I hung up, and with that, I severed the last thread connecting me to the life we once shared. Time moved differently afterward. Some days felt unbearably long, others vanished in an instant. Slowly, I learned to live without her. I took long walks, rediscovered old hobbies abandoned during marriage, spoke to friends I had neglected. Piece by piece, I reclaimed parts of myself I hadn't realized I had surrendered. And yet, shadows remained. Betrayal has a way of following you, whispering doubts into new beginnings. When a colleague smiled too warmly, when a friend texted late at night, when I felt the stirrings of affection again, a voice inside me asked, "What if it happens again?" The ghost of her accusation lingered too, insecure. But I knew better now. Insecurity hadn't driven me, truth had. My instincts weren't weakness. They were warnings I had been taught to ignore. Months later, I walked past a store window and saw a jacket strikingly similar to the one I had once chosen for her. For a moment, rage threatened to flare again, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. That jacket was no longer a symbol of love stolen. It was simply fabric, thread, buttons. It held no power unless I gave it power. I turned away from the window, continuing down the street with lighter step. Healing doesn't arrive suddenly. It comes in moments like that, quiet realizations that the past no longer defines the future. Perhaps love would return to me someday. Perhaps it wouldn't. Either way, I had survived. I had walked through fire and carried my scars into a new chapter. And as I stood on the bridge that evening, river flowing steadily beneath, I whispered to myself, not insecure, not broken, not defeated. Just free.